The first rule of academia is that nothing should ever be done for the first time. That rule seems particularly strong in legal education, still operating under the continuing influence of the 19th century Langdellian Revolution. So, to this room of 40 people, brimming with new ideas that they want to see implemented or more widespread, let me start by asking you one question. What is wrong with you? Why do you insist on banging your heads against the wall? Now, I know what your answers will be. They'll be, I want to make law school better. I want to make my classes better. I want my students to be better prepared for the demands of legal practice, not only for themselves, but for their clients, who deserve competent representation. I understand and I admire those motivations. But I want to use my time here today to add one more motivation, to add a why to the many talks we'll hear today about what we should teach and how we should teach it. We need to push new ideas that use technology, and new ideas that embrace insights from learning theory. Why? Because we have to. And we have to because if we don't, law school will get worse, which means students will be even less prepared for the practice of law, with terrible ramifications for the people who depend on lawyers. In the 15th century, there were still monasteries in Europe filled with scribes who made very important jobs preserving a lot of very important material. When the printing press was first invented, did the scribes concede that their work was outdated? Of course not. They made a quality argument. Books on paper could last a few generations, but words on parchment could last 1,000 years. And there was truth to that argument. But as the monks later learned, superior quality is but one consideration, and it can be overcome by other virtues. We all know that the internet is the printing press of our age. But do we know who the scribes are or were? Well, there were record stores and video stores and travel agents. And there are reeling newspapers and book publishers, and the list goes on. But the one thing we can be sure of, at least most law professors think, is that the impact of the internet will stop short of the law school door. Why? Quality, of course. The thought's widespread. You can't beat a place-based law school for a quality legal education. And there's truth to that. Just as there was truth to the assertion of the monks, of the quality of parchment over paper. But it's a dangerous truth if it blinds us to the need for change. Because the bigger truth is that the impact of the internet is not going to stop short of the law school door. And just to be clear, by impact, I don't mean, oh yeah, we rewired the building and now we have Wi-Fi in the cafeteria. By impact, I mean the asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. In the mid-1990s, a writer for Newsweek magazine scoffed at the notion that the internet could ever replace print, that the internet could ever make print into a dinosaur. You see, he had done a search for the date of the Battle of Trafalgar, and he came up with a lot of irrelevant search results, and for him, that was that. Well, at that very same time, there were these people out at Stanford working on an improved internet search engine. Well, the rest is history, as they say. The fact that the internet is still in its infancy, the fact that it hasn't hit us yet, is not an argument that we're not in its path. In fact, my friend Philip Schrag from Georgetown wrote an article for the Villanova Law Review. In it, he says that it's likely that an online, web-based legal education can become the norm soon, and that it's possible that only a handful of law schools would survive. Now, he says this knowing full well and decrying that this would result in a loss of quality. The monks of 1500 surely would relate to the situation. In my view, if all else in legal education remains the same, Professor Schrag is being way too optimistic. But that qualification, if all else in law school remains the same, is a big one. In the end, maybe we're not like the dinosaurs. Maybe, if we're creative and our culture allows it, maybe place-based law schools can survive in the internet age. Here's what I think we would need to do. 3 steps. First, we'd need to migrate to the web all material that can effectively be taught online. And the answer can't be, oh, guess what? None of our material can effectively be taught online. In a few minutes, we'll hear from David Thompson. He's going to talk about migrating the entire first year online. I call that a good start. Schools can do this job of migrating material online in many different ways. They can do it alone, they can work in consortia, or through crowdsourcing. But the ultimate goal is not optional. We need to use the internet in this way, ultimately to drive down costs. Second, law schools need to use the law school building, the physical plant, to create a premium educational experience that online providers can't come close to copying. We're all familiar with the 2007 Carnegie Report, and most of us are familiar with the 1992 McCrate Report and their assertions that there's a lack of practical training in law school and poor assessment methods. Well, assertions of that sort, criticisms of that sort, date back 100 years. It's time now to fix the long-recognized deficiencies in legal education. That means more clinics, more flipped classrooms, more active learning, more exercises, more simulations, more formative assessment, more of the things that I'm happy to say we'll be hearing more than a dozen of the talks today about. And third, we need to make this premium experience into the new and regulated norm. It wasn't until 1927 that law school was even required anywhere in the United States. Eventually, the argument that law school was needed in order to protect the public from incompetent lawyers won the day. That same argument needs to be made and to prevail now, but it can't be done through smoke and mirrors. The legal education establishment, to survive, really does need to take to heart the criticisms of the last 100 years. We really need to include more clinical and more experiential opportunities in our teaching for every student. Because if we don't, the place-based law school will have no credibility in trying to retain its regulatory monopoly in the face of an online competitor. So, this conference, which is all about change, is exactly what the doctor ordered. Keep banging your heads against the wall. The stakes are very high. It is possible that the legal education establishment will react like the scorpion in the fable of the scorpion and the frog, preferring the following of old habits, even over survival. But that choice is not preordained. The abbot of Sponheim, who made the assertion that I said earlier about the superiority of parchment over paper, it turns out he wrote some books of his own, which were printed on paper using the printing press. He adapted. Why? Because he had to. We have to adapt as well. I look forward to hearing the rest of the talks today for inspiration on how to do so. Thank you.